Can you go into detail on how Section 78B-8-402 violates the Fourth Amendment? I'm having trouble getting my point across to the senator I'm in contact with. Now, I've got to give you a little backstory on this. A few days ago, I got contacted by some people that have a great watchdog organization, if you will, in the state of Utah. It's called Defending Utah. And I think every state ought to have some bulldogs like these guys out there watching out for the what's going on with the state and the legislature and so on and so forth. And what had happened was we didn't have a lot of information. We honestly did not. And they asked me to, just kind of collaborate with them on a little video that they wanted to put out. And so Ben McClintock had a Zoom conference with me, and we had a little discussion about something. An interim committee, a legislative interim committee was to meet, and is to meet yet, on the 16th of June, 2020. Now I'm reading from some of this because I've got the material in my hand that has caused such great controversy. It's woven together in a kind of a strange way, though. This is it's the Law Enforcement and Criminal Justice Committee. It's an interim committee of the Utah legislature. And it says, and now they have an agenda that they put out. The agendas are, as you might well imagine, quite broad brush. And you don't know really where they're going with something until it really gets into the meeting, and sometimes that's a little bit late. So at any rate, agenda item number 3 read, testing for COVID-19. Oh my goodness, ears are up, antennas are up. We're going to see what that's about. Because as you know, there really isn't a valid test for COVID-19. There's a test that you can get that tests for the family of COVID, but that family has been a long time here. And it's really not definitive. And on top of that, most of the tests that are given have 5-day waiting periods on them. There's a quick one you can do. It costs a lot more to do, so it's about a 45-minute return. But the fact of the matter is that most of the people are getting the 5-day one. And probably for good reason, it's more expensive. But the fact of the matter is that there's an awful lot of false positives too. And so, of course, you're going, whoa, what are they doing here? They're testing for COVID-19. Is this a mandatory thing, or what is it, or not? So here's what it said under agenda item number 3, testing for COVID-19. It said the committee will study the possibility of making changes to Utah Code section, and then it's 78B-8-402, which was referred to in the question, to allow for mandated testing for COVID-19. That is the entire agenda item. There's no more, no less than that. You need to just understand that. So when Defending Utah and I got talking about this, we said, we don't really know, but it did refer into the issue about this particular part of the Utah Code. And so, of course, we had looked at that before we got together and made a little discussion about it. And that particular section of the code has to do with first responders when they come to to respond to some issue. They come out of that issue and may decide based upon what happened during that response, whether they were treating somebody or something, whether they might have got exposed to something like that. So it allows them to petition to have a mandatory blood draw of the person they interacted with. Now, right now, it covers things like AIDS and HIV, so on. So, but it does not cover COVID. Now, in my opinion, COVID-19 is not nearly as virulent as everybody said it was going to be, and it never was. And it seems to even be perhaps even diminishing in its virulency as this time has gone on. I think it has been a total facade in how we have handled this as a nation. We brought the nation to its knees. We've destroyed our economy. We have destroyed individual rights and liberty, our constitutional, You can't even go to church anymore. And you can have groups if you want to go have, grab a mob and go burn down the city or something. They're okay with that. And there have been, last I saw, over 1,200 so-called medical experts say that that's okay to do, but don't do that thing about protesting the lockdown. Oh my goodness, you can't do that. Totally insane. I think we've lost our sanity as a nation. Anyway, getting back to the question at hand. So the individual that was the first responder can say, I want the individual I treated or interacted with to be tested, have blood drawn to be tested, perhaps blood. I don't know how they're going to do it for sure with this, because like I said, there is no valid, real, true COVID-19 test out there. It's all just a family that you can test. And it may be the Q-tip in the nostril thing. I don't know. But they talk in here about if this is what they're going to change, it has to do with first responder stuff. But based on the agenda item, it could be, and maybe yet will be, a much broader perspective, mandating it across a lot broader population. We don't know, but if you're just going by the current code, and this is where the pushback has come, is that, oh, we only want to do this for a first responder so you can get you tested if you're the one they responded for COVID-19. Again, the test itself is very questionable. It takes 5 days generally to get the results back. There's many false positives about it. And in addition to that, what do you do if you test positive? What does the first responder do if they test positive? If there were some kind of prophylactic treatment, some kind of preventative treatment that could be given to somebody to say, oh my goodness, you've been exposed. Here's what you need to do to keep from getting this dread disease. There isn't one. And if there is one, they've been holding out on us, okay? So this is kind of superfluous, honestly, in many ways. But the big concern was maybe they'll broaden this. And you need to understand that very often that's what happens in legislative enactments. They have a very broad brush they paint with sometimes. And by the way, they say, oh, people should be involved in their government and everything like that. But when some people do get involved and they get concerned and they say something about it, there are legislators that say, don't bother us. We are the elitists. We understand. You will eat the stew that we make for you, or the sausage. They talk about laws being created looking like sausage. But the fact of the matter is, heaven forbid, if somebody wants to say, oh my goodness, could this really encroach further on our God-given rights? I don't know. And you heard what the agenda item said. But this particular law right here says that they can get a warrant to have your blood tested in this particular instance. They have to draw blood. They can say in fact, reasonable force may be used if necessary to obtain that from you. So they're saying we can tackle you, take you down, jab a needle in you, pull your blood out, and we'll go get it tested. And by the way, the effort to get that warrant is, according to this current law, an ex parte hearing. What that means is you are not there if you're the one that's going to get your blood drawn. Your attorney's not there if you're the one that's going to get your drug. You don't even know it's happening. Okay, so I have a lot of different concerns about this, and hopefully, but by the time we get done, and I won't belabor it too long, there are a lot of concerns about this process that they've got in place, and I think it applies even to the ones that they have there. But apparently, even if you knew that the person you treated or helped had COVID-19, thought they had it, whatever, because you got this test that doesn't really tell you for sure, but everybody kind of believes it does, but it's a lot of false positive, all those things you have. Even if you knew you had handled somebody, there's nothing you can do to prevent whatever's going to happen from happening. And by the way, it generally isn't too egregious, whatever happens. But anyway, so they go through a whole process about this ex parte request for the warrant and all this kind of stuff. And if you don't get it, they can take it to district court. And the court that you go to, it has to set a time for the hearing within 10 days after the petition. Well, for heaven's sake, if the person treated as COVID, well, maybe you'll have it by then because of the incubation period. And they have to let you know within 72 hours. But at least the petitioner and the respondent both get to have a hearing, and they go to that, and you can bring your attorney to it with that. Now, I'm probably giving you a lot more detail than you want to hear about this, but the court can say, yeah, you can do it, or no, you can't do it, and maybe we have to have follow-up testing and everything. And you have to get the test. After they tell you have to get the test, there's a period of time in which you have to have the blood drawn within 10 days from the issuance of the order. So now we're at least 20 days past the occurrence which generated the order or generated the request to get some kind of test done on somebody. And if you haven't got the disease by 20 days later, you're probably not going to get it by, at least from this person. So anyway, it talks about who pays for the testing and all that kind of stuff in this bill. Well, you know, there have been some legislators that are all sorts of wrapped up around the axle that we made that little video. You know, we're just common guys that wanted to talk about this and say we got to keep an eye on this, stay tuned. And you know, my opinion is that hit birds flutter. I don't know if you ever had a BB gun as a kid, but you could tell which bird got hit because it fluttered. Well, I think sometimes the hit birds that are fluttering are the ones that maybe got their, you know, their little secret desire kind of exposed on this thing. And maybe, just maybe, they were trying to come up with a way to say, you know what, we got to make this a little broader so that when our first responders go, somebody out there needs to know, can you give me a card that says you've been COVID tested? I don't know. I don't know where they're going. I don't know as they know, but the hit birds fluttered, and they've been some real stir about this, and there's people that are really upset. But you know what? We're just common citizens. And you know, it's interesting that Andy Jackson, when he gave his farewell address, he said, the price of liberty is eternal vigilance. And it's interesting to me that we, the people, have got to be vigilant all the time. And a congressman or a senator or legislator or whomever it is should be very, in my opinion, very excited that there's people paying attention. You know, you kind of put your arms around those people and say, you know what? We need people like you to keep things on track. And even though you may think as a legislator everything you do is totally, completely okay, I'm sure that legislator feels like there's other stuff that other legislators do that somebody better be watching those people. You know, do you hear what I'm saying? And you know, Thomas Jefferson and James Madison collaborated with this. In the Kentucky Resolution said, let no more be said of confidence in man, but bind him down from mischief in the change of the Constitution. That's what we're trying to do. We're just trying to make sure that some legislative enactment doesn't happen just because we've got this hyperventilating panic going on about some facade of a disease that's destroyed all of our liberties already and is maybe attempting to destroy further. I don't think we've heard the end of it yet. But I do believe that when we have panic, bad laws are made. You look at the so-called USA Patriot Act. Oh my gracious sakes alive. What a disgusting load of just drivel that did more to destroy our liberty perhaps than anything up to that point. Now, of course, this has exceeded it. But everybody was panicked after the 9/11/2001 attacks, and in the panic, they passed this horrendously bad bill, the USA Patriot Act, that should be rescinded in its entirety. But at any rate, I have other problems with this, and I guess we ought to probably not burrow too deeply in it. But if you look here at the Amendment 5, you know, this idea of having to be a witness against yourself, you know, it's in the Bill of Rights. I mean, we've already eviscerated this thing about free speech, about religion, about peaceable assemble. You know, oh my heavens, you want to go back to work? Don't you go petition the government. That's horrid. So all of those things are gone. This right to worship and all that, that's gone. And so here we have potentially, and I don't know as this is where it was going to go. And in fact, when we made the video, we didn't know any more than what I read you on that agenda item. So that was the discussion we had. And we admitted we don't know anymore, but we admitted that it needed to be watched. And so some of the legislators were hit birds and they fluttered, and they may have had in their back pocket something they were going to slip under the door and say that we got, oh man, this is something we got to do. And it was going to be some kind of mandated testing for every man, woman, and child in the nation. Well, at least in Utah, because this is the Utah legislature. We don't know, but we better darn well make sure that it doesn't do that. But this idea of being a witness against yourself in the Fifth Amendment. Okay, so could it be said that if they hold you down and jab you in the arm or wherever with a needle and they pull your blood out, you're a witness to yourself? I mean, this was an assault, and that was your person. You are an autonomous, sovereign person. And yeah, they've made a lot of these things legal. That doesn't mean that it's right, but they've made them according to the law they've created. But you know, the American founding fathers, we've talked about this before, they were absolutely just determined that if they had a bias at all in the court system, it was in favor of the accused, to make sure that there was not anything that would happen to an accused person that was innocent and get, basically taken down. That's where our grand juries and all these kind of things happen, and all the other things. The thing in the Sixth Amendment too, being able to know what the charges are and to be able to be represented in court. And this ex parte court hearing that they don't even tell you they're going to have a hearing, and they bring in their side of the story, and the judge could just say, yea, verily, here it is. Go, you've got your warrant, go jab that guy. Okay. That's the kind of thing that they were trying to avoid. It says, you got to be able to inform to the nature and cause of accusation. Okay, and the Utah Constitution says this too, by the way, to be confronted with witnesses against him. So you got to be there, be able to see them. Okay, to have compulsory process for obtaining witnesses in your favor, assistance of counsel. All of those things happen or could happen in this particular existing case if it did not go just on the first go around with the ex parte thing and you ended up going to a district court. But the fact of the matter is, the American founding fathers didn't want, okay, you say, well, he really didn't testify against himself. We jabbed him in the arm and took his blood, and that testified against him. Really? Or we shoved a Q-tip up his nose and down his throat, and that testified against him. And it's interesting that the law in ancient Israel was very much along those same lines. They were absolutely against an individual being compelled for any reason. See, if you got something by torture from somebody, was that, well, he testified that he was guilty? No, you couldn't do anything to bring that about, and you couldn't under the American founding fathers process either. And so, it's one of those things. If we're not going to get any value from this anyway, why do you assault and batter the person and do it under legal justification, using what they call reasonable force? What's reasonable? If you got a gold embossed invitation and said, may we please take your blood, and you said no, was that reasonable and you're done? Or do they chop your head off and kind of soak the blood off the floor and they test the blood there? There's a whole bunch in a lot of different people's minds. And again, these people that are upset about this are going to take that as being just an inflammatory statement. It was said for kind of emphasis. Their idea reasonable and my idea reasonable may be a whole bunch different. And that's where the problem comes. And I've seen a lot of people in recent videos that we've watched, police officers, for example, would probably be invoking this law to do whatever they're going to do with it, that have used what they probably assumed to be reasonable force, and people ended up dead or in the hospital, with all sorts of egregious problems. But so here's the deal. We need to be eternally vigilant. We need to say, oh, there's a question. I wonder. Let's bring the question up. So if you never get a chance to ask the question, you never get a hearing about it, you never do anything except take what's served to you by these august elitists that oftentimes sit in the halls of our justice. And there's probably, on rare occasion, really good ones there that are trying to do the right thing for the right reasons. And other of them think they're doing the right thing for the right reasons, but they need to think about the whole picture of where everything fits in terms of why government exists. And if you read the Declaration of Independence, it's to preserve or secure, it says, God-given rights. So that's what that was all about. And who was it that gave the question? That was Rick. Rick, I hope that gives you some idea as to why we made that video. And apparently you've seen it, you've interacted with a Utah legislator, they pushed back on it, and that's the logic behind it. Things need to be asked. We don't write a blank check for these people. It might seem like it a lot of times. Tell them, go do whatever you want to us. We'll be happy with what you come back with. No, in fact, if I could find it really quickly, and I think I can, in the Utah Constitution, in Article 1 is kind of like our Bill of Rights in Utah. Section 27 says, frequent recurrence to fundamental principles is essential to the security of individual rights and the perpetuity of free government. A fundamental principle is, are you following this contract you signed when you became a legislator? Are you keeping in mind all the things that you said you would do, you took an oath to do? Are you doing what the real role of government is, and that is to secure God-given rights? And if you're not, we need to remind you of that. And that's what maybe this was. And if you're a legislator and you're wrapped up around the axle about this, I think you need to do a recalibration. Right or wrong, whatever our rationale was for bringing this forth, it was done by people that care about our fellow man and our individual God-given rights. I doubt the legislator will take the time to listen to this answer, though, whatever one you're dealing with, because a lot of them think they just have to be wrapped up around the axle about anything we do. Because by golly, they're in the office and we're not. Okay, well, having said all of that, I guess, Rick, I hope that made some sense to you and maybe for some other people about what happens when you get legislators that get pretty big for their britches.